Welcome to the Stories Told podcast. This is episode 15, Missing Madmartigan. This is the Stories Told podcast. Two authors talking about stories in movies, TV, and of course, books.
I'm Michael Grayford. I write action-adventure stories in fantasy and sci-fi worlds, sometimes for younger readers and sometimes for adults. And I try to always inject at least a little bit of humor.
And I am author E.W. Barnes, and I write action-adventure, time travel novels, and space opera science fiction. Thousands of years, thousands of worlds. But be forewarned, beyond here, there will be spoilers. Are you ready for the adventure? Let's begin. And welcome back to the Stories Told podcast. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing very good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How comes the Zara series?
Going along, I'm still working on the sequel and intermittently working on the outline for the third book. What have you got cooking?
Well, I submitted that first 500 words of a short story to that anthology and was passed through to the second round. So I'm very excited about that.
Excellent.
The next step, of course, is to finish the short story and submit that. And then if the rest of the story is as good to the reviewers as the first 500 words were to them, then theoretically it should be accepted into the anthology. And once that happens, I will be very excited to share the title of the anthology and release date and all that information to our listeners so they can know where they can find it.
Great.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
How long do you think the whole story will be?
Well, I'm going to have to cut it down. I have a plot, a very rough outline for myself. I'm not a full-on pantser, and I'm not a full-on plotter. I do a little bit of both. So I do like 30,000-foot plotting stuff, and then I let myself explore what's going to happen in the story on the ground as I'm writing. So I think my plot has like 6 sections to it, and I'm at 2,500 words and not out of section 1 yet.
Ah, okay.
So I'm going to have to cut it down. The limit is 6,000 to 8,000 words for the anthology. So I have a feeling I will be shaving some stuff. But right now I'm just letting myself write.
Yeah. Well, you got to get it out.
Yeah. And it's coming out really easily. It's a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun with this story. And when I finish this, then I will then go back to Ecliptic, which is the second book in the Adventures of the Empyrean Guard series. I really would like to get that whole series finished this year, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that would be great. I want to write a short story in the Zara universe.
Oh, that would be cool.
For, to have it available freely for people, who want to sign up for my newsletter or whatever.
Yeah, it's a great way to introduce people to your universe.
Yeah. And it seems like it would be something simpler. It's actually more daunting to me than writing a whole new novel in that universe.
Well, and if you want a critique of your short story, I'd be happy to do that for you.
Okay, great.
So, have you read or watched any great stories lately?
Let me see. In the last week, nothing really new. I think I've just been, watching the same series that I was before, Ted Lasso series.
Yeah.
Other than that, no. How about you?
I'm still going through that Brandon Sanderson Stormlight archive. It's the second book in the series. And I started watching the Lost in Space series on Netflix. Have you seen that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll have to talk about that sometime.
Yeah.
You were so awesome in putting together a fantastic list of television shows and series and movies and books that we can talk about in this podcast. It's an amazing list, and I love so much on it. Some of it I actually don't know what it is, which is also cool. And a lot of them I do, and I'm very excited about. Did you put Lost in Space on there?
I don't know. If I didn't, feel free to throw it on the list.
I might do that. Maybe. I've only seen one episode, so We'll have to wait and see. I will say this. I got very excited when I saw that you included Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh yeah,
I love that series.
that's so good.
My offspring introduced me to it, and I was dubious because it's a cartoon.
Yeah.
But I followed through on my agreement to watch it for like 4 or 5 episodes, and then both my spouse and I were hooked, and we were the ones going, "Are we going to watch this tonight? Are we going to watch this tonight?"
That's great.
But today, we're here to talk about something else. We're here to talk about episode 1 in the first season of the Willow series that is available on Disney Plus. And this episode is entitled The Gales. And I am looking at a wiki. It's the willowofgoodfandom.com wiki, just as a little help with the plot summary, just to make it a little bit more clean and smooth. And I'll put a link in the description box below, so if people want to find this wiki, they can and take a look at this plot summary. But I kind of enjoyed this first episode. There were some things that I wasn't crazy about, but I enjoyed it overall. How about you, sort of as a global approach to it before we get into detail?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I generally had positive feelings about it. It was fun to be back in the Willowverse.
Perfect. Yes. Well, so we start off this episode with sort of a prologue, which I think was appropriate considering the amount of time that's passed since the original movie. And it kind of reminds us about, Elora Danan and that Sorsha and Madmartigan, set up kingdom in Tirazleen. And then the Sorsha does the voiceover for the prologue, and she explains that Willow is having visions about an ancient evil that will rise again. And they hid Elora Danan's identity from her, from everyone else, and from her, to kind of maybe see if they could stop that evil from rising again. An ancient evil that will rise again was the phrase. And then the next scene we get is 2 young women sword fighting, sparring. And it's very cool. And one of them is a redhead. And I think we're meant to assume that's Elora Danan. Is that what the feeling that you got too?
Yeah, I mean the setup they do, right? They end the prologue bit talking about her, and like nobody knows, no one else knows who she is or where she is. She doesn't even know herself. And then they cut to those 2, and you're like, okay, it's obviously one of them, right? That's what you're thinking.
Yes. And one of them, as we discover, is the princess. So they are Kit and Jade. It's Princess Kit and Jade. Jade is the one who with red hair. So we are assuming it's Elora Danan because Elora Danan had red hair. It's very clear from the very beginning that this is Madmartigan's daughter.
Yes.
And I thought that they did a great job of giving her lines and direction to really sort of channel Madmartigan. You could really see Madmartigan and Kit.
Yes. I like the setup that they did right at the start. Really throw you right into it.
Yeah. She wants to leave the boundaries, the magical boundaries that have been set up to protect the kingdom. She wants to go on adventures. But Jade has some resistance. We don't know what it is, but there's something holding her back when Kit's talking about going on adventures. And then the next thing we learn is that Kit has to return for a ball. And she has to get dressed up. And where's her brother? Oh, she has a brother, twin brother. So then we go to the twin brother, who apparently is a player. He's out with a cute blonde, a serving girl who makes good muffins.
A muffin girl.
In the kitchen, yes, her muffin girl. And so it appears that she's the latest in a long line of young women who he likes and then doesn't, and then sort of drops. So, and when they get back to the castle, Kit's harassing him. It's cute. The interplay between the siblings is really cute.
I like the way that they set up the story from the perspective of what the different characters want. You see right from the beginning, they each have desires and there's agency. and you get the conflict with Kit. When he's going to be. I guess we'll see that. Why don't you keep describing the scenes, and then we'll discuss it.
Yeah, no, and it's okay if we jump ahead. Again, there's listeners know there are spoilers. So.
Right.
So we get them having this interaction with each other about, she's harassing him about, if when you jump her like you dump everybody else, she's going to make the muffins bad. And he's harassing her about, she has to get ready and all this stuff. So there's just some really nice sibling interplay there. And then we learn that this whole ball is about the arrival of a delegation from a neighboring kingdom bringing Kit's betrothed. She's been betrothed to a man she's never met, doesn't know. And so then we get this ballroom scene, and there's a lot of tension between Sorsha and her kids. So this is not a nurturing relationship between them, and I don't know whether it's because Madmartigan is gone. We learn that he's disappeared. He's no longer in the picture, which of course is kind of necessary considering, Val Kilmer is unable to speak anymore. I'm sure he probably would have loved to have come back to this universe. I don't know. Do you think he would have liked to have, you watched that documentary. Do you think he would have liked to have come back into this universe?
Oh yeah, I definitely think so. Yeah, I think he would have loved to have a chance to hop back in there as Madmartigan.
Yeah, that's kind of my sense as well. But of course he can't. So he's disappeared. And, they don't know where he's been. And he's been gone for a very long time. He went out on some kind of a mission or a quest and then did not return. And so he's an absent parent. And so I don't know whether the tension in this family is because of the absent parent or because Sorsha's the queen and she's got has all these responsibilities on her shoulders, but there's tension amongst all of them. That's one thing I actually didn't like about the show. As one of a couple things I didn't like. Right. We have the ballroom scene. Kit is unhappy about this man, but then Jade announces that she's actually leaving too. She's going off to go on special training to become a knight for Tira's Lean. And so Kit gets really bent out of shape because not only is she getting married, but she's losing her best friend. And it seems a little whiny to me. And then in the middle of the night, the castle is attacked. And Eric, our player prince, is kidnapped after declaring his love to Muffin Girl, who he calls Dove, because he doesn't remember her name. Or at least he's...
Great.
But he actually says he wants to marry her. And he seems serious.
I wonder how many other girls he has said that about, or two.
I know. And I'm sure that was done on purpose. We don't know whether this is the full player mode or he's actually serious. So, and I will also say that I'll save this for later.
Okay.
Anyway, they kidnap Eric. These sort of creatures come out of nowhere. There's a very dark battle. And that's one of the things that I found difficult to watch in the show is that I guess because they assume our televisions can lighten things up. When it's dark, it's very dark. It's hard to see details. So he's kidnapped by these dark creatures. They're gone, and they have to go off on a quest to go rescue him. And so this is the beginning of the real story. It's another journey story like the original Willow, where Kit and Jade, and they also take Graydon, who is Kit's intended betrothed, and then a prisoner named Borman. And I want to talk a little bit more detail about Borman in a minute. And then there's also a sort of an older mentor figure named Case. And they all ride off to go rescue Eric. And as they're heading that way, they discover that Dove is following them. And then there's chaos begins. The chaos begins. They get chased by Bone Reavers, who are essentially like what they remind me of the I'm blanking from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh,
the guys who picked up
right.
Quill.
Yeah, I'm blanking as well.
Right. Okay. So they remind me of sort of mercenaries and sort of like answering to no one. But they're attacked by the Bone Reavers. They kill the only person who actually has any idea what he's doing, the mentor kind of character, which I knew was going to happen because these kids need to go off on their own. And then they're going to need help from another source. And they finally make it to the Nelwyn village to try to find Willow. And they find Willow, and then Willow looks at Dove, the muffin girl, and says, "Hello, Alora." And then we realize that we've been fooled, and it's not Jade. It's the muffin girl who's been disguised. And she is actually Alora Dannon. So that's sort of it in a nutshell.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Borman.
Okay.
We meet Borman. He's in jail, and the queen is talking to him. She's going down, and she's actually confiding in him. There's a level of intimacy there, and I don't mean romantic intimacy. I mean, they know each other well kind of intimacy. Like they've talked a lot, which I thought was very interesting.
Didn't understand there's a lot you don't know about that, right? Pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Everything we don't know about it. And it's an interesting setup because why is she talking so comfortably with this person that she has locked up in her dungeon?
Yes, exactly. It really begs the question, what is the story here? I actually found that very interesting. That was very intriguing.
Yeah, no, there's a lot I like about what they did at the start of this series. The show. I like how characters are set up, right? And I like the conflicts that they built in, and the general story layout and the plot and the structure and going on a journey again. I like a lot about how that's set up. There's a lot that we don't know, right? Obviously, that led to this point, which hopefully will get revealed throughout the rest of the show.
And the other thing that we get to see about Borman is when he is actually tasked to go with this group, it's because he's been out there and he's been beyond the barrier, and he knows he's been out doing things in the kingdom, and so she's going to forgive all his crimes, and then he becomes the comic relief. So he goes from this sort of serious character in jail that's offering her advice to a comedic element, which I actually kind of liked that as well.
He strikes me as sort of Madmartigan character, right? Obviously, we know he's done criminal things. He's clearly set up to be, a self-serving person at the start of this. Very much Madmartigan type character. And he's willing to make jokes as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this guy goes.
So what did you like about the first episode?
We hit on some of it already. I like the way I like the setup. I think the biggest thing. I like how they sprinkle humor throughout. It's what Willow had, right? It's not super serious like Lord of the Rings or something like that. Willing to take us on a lighter journey. We know there will be stakes, but at the same time, there's more of a lighthearted feeling to it. I like how they set up the princess potentially getting married off, and she doesn't want that, obviously. So we have a conflict with that, and then betrothed gets stuck on the journey with them. So they have a lot of good things woven together in the story. I really like how each character that goes on the journey feels distinct. Everyone is very identifiable.
Well, actually, I may disagree with you on that, but okay.
I thought they were very, very. They had their own thing going on, and some of that might be from the way that the actors portrayed it. I thought it's kind of, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. I thought it was kind of funny how they're going on this journey to rescue the prince, right? The prince of the land. And this is the group that they send. They send the princess out, her friend, weak, obviously incapable betrothed, the oldest soldier they could find, and a criminal who's so untrustworthy he's locked in chains inside of a dungeon. Not the best fighters in the village. It's just like this random group of people they threw together. So,
right, exactly. Not a full army to go out and take care of it, which is, I'm sure she has that at her command.
So I thought that was funny. It's like I said, it's good and bad. At the same time as it's funny, it's also kind of silly and ridiculous. but it was entertaining. I really like the reveal of Alora
Yeah.
Dannon at the end. I don't know why. Like at that
Yes.
point in the story, I wasn't even really thinking about who's Alora, when's she going to come back. It came up and it was like, oh, that's cool. You get to see, and you get to see
I
Willow
agree. I thought
have
it was
magic
cool too.
actually and do the reveal, and having it be him, I think, was very impactful and made sense.
I agree. I agree. And it was good to
Yes, it
see
was.
Willow again. It
Yeah, it
was
was good to see
you
him come back. It was great. He was right back in the role.
yeah. Well, things that I really liked about this is I thought it was the fantasy elements were outstanding. All the fantasy pieces of it were really well done. And I really enjoyed that. I thought the scenery was gorgeous, just beautifully filmed, really put you in the world. I thought the music was terrific. And like you said, the comedy elements were, exactly where you needed them to be and exactly how you needed them to be. The things that I wasn't crazy about, I don't like Kit. And I think you really put a very good point on it when you identified Borman as the Madmartigan character, which means then what is Kit? Because we started off the episode seeing Kit as the Madmartigan character. And then if Borman's the Madmartigan character, what is Kit? Well, Kit is the whiny one who probably has known her whole life that she was going to be married in a political marriage. Why is she whining about it now? I wrote down here, I have a very 70s feel here with kids arguing with their mom. And please don't laugh too hard. But Eric reminds me of one of the Bee Gees. He looks like Andy Gibb.
Great. So
Shirt wide open and the gold chain and the long hair. I'm like, dude, you look like Andy Gibb.
I agree with what you said. I'm glad you pointed out the fantasy elements because I felt the same. I didn't nail it like you did. I thought the scenery was fantastic. The beautiful landscapes very much fit into a fantasy world. I mean, we're all spoiled from Lord of the Rings now, but I think this
Yeah.
delivered on it for a TV show. I think they had great sweeping vistas, showing them adventuring and traveling over these different locations. I thought that was done really well. I thought the monster designs when they get attacked were really cool. I don't know how they fit into the world yet. They all seem so different, almost like from a horror movie. They were cool. They did them well. So I'm curious to see any of that gets explained, or if it was just, hey, let's come up with these weird things and throw it in there. Yeah, I have the same issue. My issue with the characters, well, it's the same that you said, and also I feel like the prince and princess in particular, but to some extent some of the other characters, their acting feels very anachronistic. It feels very modern. It doesn't feel like fantasy, like medieval type fantasy. I think
Yeah, maybe that's what
older
it is that was
characters
bothering me. That's a good point.
are done well. Sorsha, I think, fits her role
Yeah.
still. I think all the older people do well. The younger people all feel like kids nowadays. Not completely, but there's enough of that in there where it kind of takes me out of fantasy world a bit.
Yeah.
I think it dampens the tone.
And it's funny because that's not what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking kids nowadays. I was thinking kids from a long time ago. But maybe I need to pay closer attention to some, current series with young people in them and take a look at that. Because maybe I don't have a broad enough lens on that.
That's just, when I say nowadays, I mean like more modern era, right? Versus medieval times and being in this fantasy world. We don't act like we've come to expect, right? For fantasy world.
Yeah.
Some of that is just their look too. They look sort of modern-y.
Yeah, and actually, I didn't mind that with Kit because Kit was clearly, again, she was her father's daughter. She is a sword fighter. That's her thing, and that kind of got the impression. And I guess you pointed out well that it never was actually really said. I don't think that she was being sent because she actually has the skills.
Yeah.
go out and do the sword fighting like her dad. And so her look was fine for me. It was just sort of the whole Eric stood out as seeming to be so much different in his look than everyone else. Even, you know, Graydon, the betrothed, he seemed to fit in with the rest of the look with everybody else. I don't know.
I agree. I think that's true. And there's something about like their style of speech that's, yeah, it's just like
It is
the
very
way
modern.
they say things. It has like a
Yeah,
more
agreed.
like modern hip slant to it. It kind of pulls me out.
Yes. But I don't actually really mind that too much. As long as they keep us in the world, keep us going, keep us moving forward, and don't rest on the modern slang and go, oh, look how modern we are. Because that's a danger. If you incorporate it in as sort of a part of an element to the story and it's part of the detail of the story, I think that's
it can
okay.
work. We'll see where it goes. I think another
We'll see where it
thing
goes,
that
yeah.
I felt was missing from this was something that you pointed out last week when we discussed the movie Willow, which was the movie had a warmth to it. I felt like this was lacking, at least in this episode.
Yeah.
And part of that, oh, go
Well,
ahead, go ahead.
got it with Willow. No, I was going to say we got it when
Right, yeah,
Willow
it took
appeared.
all the way through the whole episode until that happened. I think
Yeah.
the one thing that
Yeah.
really stood out for me, which is something that you already mentioned, was the mother, her Sorsha's interaction with her children. She's kind of mean to them and demanding, and it's like that
Yeah.
sort of set a tone that was like not very warm and welcoming for this story, and it seemed unnecessary. That's
Yeah.
the thing.
I agree. And to be honest, I mean, we can go ahead and project backwards with the information that we have now about why Sorsha may have been like that. But then if we were going to have all that information and you know figure out why Sorsha is so mean to her kids, we would need to spend some more time with her. And we don't. Our characters get sent off on a journey and we don't get to see, you know, in this episode, where Sorsha's coming from, other than little glimpses of Madmartigan's gone and she's afraid, and you know, Willow was warning her of evil coming. And further on in the series, we do get some flashbacks, which kind of help fill in some of the details. But I would have liked to have spent a lot more time with Sorsha.
And I think it wasn't just her interaction with her kids. It's like everybody's constantly sniping at each other. They're always making these like snarky, sarcastic remarks. It felt like from a writing perspective, they were trying to amp up conflict. And I don't think they needed to have that. There's a larger conflict to the story that's interesting. We don't need this, you know, minute by minute, you know, picking at each other. If you want to have the siblings doing that, that's fine. That's what siblings do. It makes sense. But it just seemed like it was all over the place.
I agree. I think that's really well identified. I think you're exactly right. It did feel like that. As soon as you said that, I was like, yep, that's it. It was an attempt to create the interpersonal conflict that will then help with, or might help with, character arcs. But I agree. I think it was unnecessary. It could have been done, you know, just little itty bits of things. We as viewers and fans, we can interpret a lot. We can figure it out.
Exactly. And
so, I think you're right. I will also say one other thing that the first time I watched it, this is what I said to my spouse as we were watching it. I knew that Case, the mentor figure, was going to die, because I said to my spouse, all of these actors are inexpensive because they're young. The older people get paid more because they've been doing it for longer. So they're going to get pushed out of space so that they can spend more money on locations and special effects, etc. I mean, that's what it felt like to me. It felt like a series that was very cost conscious.
That's funny.
If that makes any sense.
That's an interesting note. I mean, it kind of carries because, you know, Sorsha's left behind too. It's like, all right, she's in this episode and we're moved on.
I don't know. Maybe that's like ridiculously cynical.
It could be something to that.
Yeah. So anyway, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give the first episode of the
I
Willow
would give
series,
it a
The Gales?
6. I felt like it's a fun enough start. There's promise to it. I'm intrigued enough to continue, but I'm not blown away. I'm hoping to see more of a return to the tone and style of the movie, if we get there, or if it's going in a different direction, to see something more impressive with the plot and the character development. Yeah, I think there's promise. Like I said before, I like the setup, like some of the plot elements they do. It feels sort of, how when a show's starting off, people are trying to they're figuring out their characters, and this sort of show is getting its footing. It feels that way from this episode. So yeah, I give it a 6. I'm positive on it, but
yeah,
didn't think it was great.
And I'm going to give it a 7 because I too am very hopeful. I was very hopeful after I first watched this. Okay, I loved the fantasy action. Some of the character interaction was annoying, but for the most part, I was really happy with it, and I was looking forward to the next one.
Yep.
And the next one, for our listeners, which we will talk about in the next podcast episode, is entitled The High Aldwin. So we invite you to join us next time for the Stories Told podcast, where we're going to talk about Willow, Season 1, Episode 2, The High Aldwin. And in the meantime, you can find Michael's website link in the description notes below, as well as my website and a link to the audiobooks that are here on this YouTube channel. And we so deeply appreciate everyone who likes and subscribes and clicks the notification bell to learn when the next episode airs. So we thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Mike. This has been so much fun.